to know where I'm coming from. I did not get here as a coach sitting in front of you sharing this webinar because everything was peachy for me. I definitely had a rough road to start off. So to start everything off, basically I went 15 plus years going from one unhealthy relationship to another one, not really learning anything out of or getting anything out of all the lessons I was getting from the previous relationships. And they progressively got worse. And the last long-term relationship that I had, I actually had gotten married to someone who was a friend of a friend, and things moved rather quickly. I mean, it was really quickly, went from we're dating to he wanted to move in, even though I was not comfortable with it, and asking me to marry him. And I said yes, even though there was a bunch of red flags and I really knew better. But I had this biological clock ticking. For some reason, I thought at that point that 29 years old was old. And if I wanted to have a family and I wanted to have children, that I needed to say yes to this marriage proposal. So I said yes, and we started planning a wedding. I had wanted a quiet backyard wedding, and he wanted a big Long Island wedding. And we got a big, huge Long Island wedding at Ohega Castle. For anyone who knows where that is, that's the place where the stars go for their weddings. So I felt a little bit bad or felt guilty that I was not that excited about getting married there, because I thought, wow, I'm so lucky that I'm able to get married to this beautiful place. And here I am not happy about it. Well, so we invited all of our friends, a family, we had people from all over the place, and we got married. It was the most beautiful day of my life. And then that night, after a wonderful day, my then husband lost his temper after I spilled some water onto the ground, and it made a mess. And he got very angry with me. And I said, sweetheart, let's not make this ruin the night. Let's stop here. And that was the wrong thing to say to him. So for the next few hours, he chased me around our beautiful honeymoon suite as I was naked, yelling, cursing, screaming, threatening me, telling me he wished he could throw me out the window, telling me that it was the worst mistake he had ever made. And I was scared. I was really scared. And I really wanted to run out the door and escape from him. But I was naked and I was afraid and embarrassed. So I stayed inside because I was embarrassed. And I tried locking myself into one of the rooms, and he was banging on the door. Let me in. Finally, I said, okay, fine, I'll let you in, but we need to be calm. And as soon as I opened the door, it started all over again. And long story short, the next thing I knew, he was chasing me into the main bedroom where our beautiful 4-post bed was. That was supposed to be our bridal bed. And he threw me on the bed and started strangling me until I lost my feeling in my arms and my legs. And I started to lose consciousness, and I was fighting. And then as everything got heavier, I stopped fighting. I thought, this man's going to kill me, and it's my wedding night. I chose this man. Even though there were tons of red flags before, I chose this man, and all of that kind of flashed before my eyes. And luckily, he stopped. He got off of me, he walked away, and he looked like he felt remorse. And if you've ever seen anyone lose their temper, he was like, his eyes were black. It's like someone had come over him. And when he walked away, he came back and was like, I am so sorry. I lost my temper because I was so stressed out. This has been such a stressful time. And excuse. And he was a really good salesman, so he knew the right words to say. And what the right words to say were to make me feel bad about how all of our friends had come to visit, all the money that my family had spent by traveling from all over the country, and even family from France had come. And he really used that to manipulate me into giving him realistically another chance, because he promised it would never happen again. Said, please just come with me on the honeymoon and it'll be fine. It'll never happen again. So, of course, the honeymoon was great. It was a beautiful time at the honeymoon, and a few months went by, and then the temper came back. And the first time it came back, he threw things across the room. He picked up furniture, threw it across the room, threatened me again. And basically for the next 5 years, I spent dealing with his temper, dealing with him losing his temper, feeling like I was walking on eggshells. I was spit on, I was pushed, I was cursed at. Bitch, whore, cunt were 3 of his favorite words. Those were words that became very normal to me. When now I could never imagine anyone speaking to me that way, but for some reason at that time, I had just become very used to those words. So those were like typical words that I heard, and those are very harsh words. Those are very, difficult words to hear from the person who's supposed to be your best friend. And I started to hear that on a regular basis. I was told all the time to be quiet, nobody needed to hear from me, and just really started to really break me down. And I started to really change as a person, and I just never felt like I could really be myself. And I started looking for ways to get out of the relationship, and we actually broke it off several times. He went and moved out, and then of course things got better, so I let him move back in. Of course that didn't stay that way. The cops were called on more than a few occasions, and I mean it was just a total mess. Like, my neighbors got used to the cops being at the house, and it was not the life that I thought I was going to be living as a married woman. And one day I was working at a second job, and I got a text message from him that said he had quit his job. And I said, hey, sweetheart, do me a favor, go back there and get your job back. Tell them that you just lost your temper and you really would like to get your job back, because he was supposed to make a lot of money that day and it was going to be a good day at his job. And his response was, just like typical cunt bitch Stephanie, not to support her husband. And I looked at that message and I said, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. And with that, I called up a friend of mine and I said, hey, is the offer still open for me to come and live with you? She said, yes, of course. I said, listen, I don't know how he's going to react. I don't know how this is going to turn out. She said, I have surveillance all over my house. Don't worry. This is a safe place. He doesn't know where I live. This is a safe place. So I said, okay. So I moved in with her for a few months as he decided to get his stuff together, because at first he didn't want to leave. Because I think that we had done that back and forth so many times, he probably thought that I was going to give in and start and take him back. And that wasn't happening this time. If you've ever been in one of those relationships where you're done, like women, we get done, I was done. There was nothing that I could do that I would take him back. There was nothing that could happen that I would take him back. And realistically, I should have had that feeling way longer before I did, but it took me 5 years. And one of the biggest things that I had of why I stayed for that long, and why people always say, well, why do women in abusive relationships stay that long? For me, I grew up thinking and learning that once you get married, you stay married. And just like the name of my page and my book, Being Loved Shouldn't Hurt, I didn't really understand that love was not this uncomfortable, anxiety-provoking thing. And it's actually one of the things I see over and over again with my clients as well, is that a lot of us did not learn that love was this peaceful, calm place. My home was not my safe place. And so when I decided to get a divorce and I decided to really stick through with it, he was thrown off. Like, he didn't really know what to do. So he was trying everything he could by harassing me, stalking me, threatening me. Not exactly the best ways of trying to get me back, but there was nothing that he could do that I would take him back. And I went to no contact. I did all of those things to try to keep him away. So let's flash forward there a little bit. And I was divorced. It took about 6 months to get a divorce. And I started having some issues. It wasn't smooth. It was not as smooth like, oh, everything's better now that I got a divorce from this person who's bringing out the worst in me and making me feel really terrible. I had legal issues. My grandmother passed away. I had started dating a guy that I knew from middle school, so I thought he was a good guy. Wrong again. He ghosted me, disappeared. I got a blood clot, and I lost it. I became depressed, and I fell into a hole. And I had never been that low in my entire life. And I spent the next few weeks going to work, coming home, putting on my pajamas, curling up in a ball, and just trying to watch self-help videos, trying to just get through the day. And again, I lost like 25 pounds. I couldn't do anything. In fact, the ability to get to work was so difficult. And if anyone in here has ever been in a depression, you feel free to share how that feels, because I just remember getting up, showering, talking to people. It just took so much energy and was so difficult to do. And so I lived that way for a while. And I was really just questioning, like, wow, I had a blood clot. I could die. Like, this is really a scary point in my life. And this is all that I will have done, is been with these awful relationships and not really accomplished what I wanted to accomplish in my life. So this was the end of 2013. And the beginning of 2014, the very beginning of January, second or third day of the new year, I got pink eye. And I was like, really? Are you punking me? Like, I can't believe I have pink eye after everything that's gone on in the past few months. And then 3 days later, I sprained my ankle while I was at work. And I went to the emergency room. And as I'm sitting in the emergency room, who was called but my ex-husband? So I'm sitting in the emergency room with my ankle swollen to twice its size. My ex-husband's in the room. And I'm sitting around, looking around, and I had this aha moment. And I kind of looked up and I said, I get it. I need to change this. I don't ever need to go through this ever again. I am my own knight in shining armor. And it was the first time that I really started to feel that I was the person that had the ability to fix the issues that were going on. Because before that, I had always hoped that someone would come and save me. That's what I wanted. I wanted someone to come, again, that knight in shining armor, to come and save me from all of these horrible things that were going on. And it wasn't happening. And I realized in that moment in the emergency room that I needed to be that person. So I started from that moment on really working at rediscovering myself. And some of the things we talked about yesterday was, building that support team and figuring out, how did I get here? And those were some of the things that I really, really worked on. And as I was doing that, I started to really figure out who I was. And two of the things we're going to talk about today are part of the rest of the story that I want to share. So after I had that aha moment, and I was in the hospital, my ankle is swollen, I'm going to be basically on crutches for the next 6 weeks. My ex-husband's there. And I go home and I start reading this book that I've been reading, the Celestine Prophecy. Great book. If you've never read it, definitely recommend it. And I started to really look at how I felt. Because before, I kind of ignored my gut feelings. I ignored that I had the ability to kind of figure things out for myself. I kind of was always looking for somebody else to come and show me the right way. I guess I thought that other people knew better than me, when in reality, we really know what's good for ourselves in a lot of ways. And again, we might have some faulty programming because we haven't really learned the right way of dealing with certain things. But in our gut, in our heart, we kind of know what we need to do for ourselves. So I started really following my gut. And I went on all these wonderful adventures. And one of the cool things that I did is I was going to concerts as often as I could. If I liked a concert, if it sounded interesting to me, I would go to it. If there was something fun happening, I would go to it and try it. And I would go by myself. I had stopped trying to go with other people. And I got to the point where I knew a lot of people and I was trying all these new things and experiencing all these new things. And I actually went on this really cool, amazing trip cross country with a friend of mine that I didn't really know very well. I actually called her up one day after watching The Amazing Life of Walter Mitty. Not a great movie, but for some reason it kind of spoke to me. It was about a guy that was kind of letting his life waste away. And I said, you know what? I need adventure. I need something fun. So I called up a friend of mine and I said, hey, do you want to drive to Montana with me? And she was like, okay. So the beginning of the trip, I drove by myself for a good six days. Drove by myself from Long Island, New York, and just started driving out west. I couch surfed. I stayed at friends' houses, and I just started driving and kind of did the open road and got to just experience different states. Some of the states, there's not much to see. Some of the other states, there's beautiful scenery all the time. And I really was able to go and just experience this by myself. And when I actually met up with my friend and went to pick her up in South Dakota, I was almost like, oh, maybe I should have just done this by myself, because it really was that fun. And before, I was always so worried about doing things by myself. I felt like being alone was a bad word. And as I started this process, being alone was actually freeing and amazing and comfortable. And I didn't have to worry about finding out from somebody else, is this cool with you? Is this what you want to do? I just got to do whatever it was that I wanted to do. And that freedom felt so good, because I'd never really experienced that kind of freedom before. So I picked up my friend in South Dakota. We couch surfed there, got to see some amazing, if you've never been to South Dakota, anyone who lives in South Dakota, it is beautiful over there. We saw the Badlands, amazing, gorgeous stuff. And we went from there, and then we drove to Wyoming. And we got to see, we got to go to Yellowstone National Park and the Grand Tetons. We camped out there for a little over a week, did hiking every day, just saw amazing things that seemed like it should be in another world. And then we went up to Glacier in Montana, another beautiful, beautiful place, and got to stick our feet in the glacial runoff and these huge mountains and beautiful hikes and amazing animals. And the energy was just so strong and so good. And I just had an amazing, amazing time. And that trip was really about the self-discovery. And when I came back from that trip, I was like, all right, you know what? I think I can just be single for the rest of my life, because I will never allow anyone to treat me badly again. I will never be in a relationship where I'm not living my best, or if someone is not adding to my life. And I decided that I was just going to, you know what? I think I might just be single. And that was kind of just the way I felt at that point. And of course, life did not go exactly as planned, as it often does not. And as I was single, I was still kind of dating, but not really interested in anything serious. I was just having fun and didn't want any connections, because to me, dating meant taking away. It meant losing part of myself, because that's what I'd always experienced before. So I was online dating and kind of like, some crazy dates, which will be a whole other story about some of the crazy people that I met on online dating, which I'm sure some of you have as well. And I started talking to this, I actually saw a picture come up of this guy holding a guitar. And I was like, this guy's kind of cute. And he had this really good energy about him. And those of you, I'm a Reiki level 2 practitioner. And energy is one of those things that I've really become more connected with through my journey. So that connection with someone. And so I felt like this really had a great vibe, like a good energy coming from this picture. And I start reading through the picture, and I'm like, wow, this sounds like a really, really great guy. And one of the things that I had done is that I started to make a list. All of the things that I would want to have in a relationship if I was ever going to be in a relationship again. Because I had gotten to the point where I felt so good about myself that I really didn't want anyone else to bring me down. And I also knew that I was not going to date anyone that was not going to add to my experience. They had to be worthy of dating me. I think before, if someone was interested in dating me, I would just date them and then see where it went. But I really had this feeling inside of me that I would only allow certain people to have the luck of dating me. And it felt kind of weird to feel that way, but I was not going to play games anymore. I did not have time for that. So I start reading the list. He's got everything that I have on my list. 6'3", musician, spiritual, he liked to travel, he was really into his family. Like, there was this whole long list of things, and I was like, all right, I like this guy. And he lived about an hour and a half away. And so I sent him a message. I was the one who sent him a message and said, hey, I think we have a lot in common, send me a message back. So he sent me a message back and pretty quickly said, hey, let's talk on the phone. So I said, okay. So we talked on the phone, and it was like I had been talking to him for a long time. I felt like we were old friends immediately. And I was very comfortable with it, but a little bit thrown off at the same time. I had some plans with my friends, and I said, I said to the guy, the musician, we'll call him. I said to the musician, hey, you know what? I gotta go. I've got to go meet my friends. I didn't want to seem too eager. And he said, all right, if you feel like talking to me after you hang out with your friends, give me a call. So I hung out with my friends, and this guy kept being on my mind. And I was like, oh, online dating, he might be a weirdo. He might not be that great of a guy. We'll see. So, but I kept having this feeling that I wanted to talk to him more. So I leave my friends probably a little bit earlier because I was really excited about talking to him again. I get back, we talk again for like hours, and it was just like time was standing still. And we say goodbye, and I say to him, listen, I just want you to know I'm going on a date tomorrow, very upfront, going on a date tomorrow, and I want you to be aware that that's what I'm doing. And he's like, well, that's fine, I'm not worried. He's like, yeah, we'll meet next week. And I was like, okay, all right, this guy's not telling me that telling me what to do or whatever. And so I went on this really awful date the next day. So he was right, he had no reason to be worried. And for that next week, we spoke pretty much every day and just had this really great connection. And we met up. He actually drove. He didn't even ask me if I wanted to meet somewhere. He said, I'm going to come after work and come meet you. Where's the best place for me to come that's close to you? So he drove all the way an hour and a half, actually probably more than that because he was in the middle of Long Island rush hour traffic. Drove all the way to come and see me. And he walked in and it was like a light beam came in. And I was like, oh my God, this guy is as adorable in real life as he actually is on his pictures. And we had an amazing night. So for the next few weeks, for the next few months, I was dating him, but I was really keeping him at arm's length as much as I really liked him and he was a really, really great guy. My past relationships were keeping me from really going all in. But the good thing was that I was very upfront and honest. I told him where I was coming from, how I was feeling. I told him I was dating other people. He did not try to force me to stop dating anybody else. His exact words were, listen, I'm not dating anybody else. I'm putting all my cards here. But if there's ever a time where you don't want to date me anymore, just be upfront with me and don't lead me on. And I said, okay, fair is fair. So there was no pressure. And I had never experienced that before because every time before it was always pressure, let's move in, it was always like, let's move to the next level very, very quickly, which is actually a tactic that people that are abusers do, is they try to push things really quickly. They hoover you, they tell you they're the best person and you're the most wonderful person to make you feel good and really pump up your ego, and then they start tearing you down. That's not what this guy was doing. And so he was so nice, and I was so fearful of relationships and so used to relationships going bad and having this feeling of like maybe I still make men go bad. I almost broke up with him. In fact, there were 3 times where he had driven all the way to come and see me, and my whole thought as he was driving to see me is, all right, tonight's the night I'm breaking up with him. He's a really nice guy, but I just don't think that this is going to work out. And so every single time I would look at him, ready to say to him, that's it, I'm done. And he's got these big blue piercing eyes, in a good way, piercing. And he looks at me and I look at him and I'm like, oh, it's quiet. I could not tell him that I wanted to break up with him because I had this feeling in my gut that if I broke up with him, I was making the worst mistake. So I didn't break up with him. And in fact, at one point, a few months later, I said, you know what? Let's try it. Let's see what happens. And it was great because in all of that time of me dating and getting to know each other, whatever, we really became friends. We were friends. And it was this amazing change of what I'd been used to before because I didn't have to be worried that he was going to disapprove of something. He really just became my best friend over that time. And I was able to tell him anything and everything without him getting angry, getting jealous, getting judgmental. He was just a good listener, and he was so open to being there for me and being a good partner. And so a few months later, we continued to date, and time went on. And then we decided we talked about being, exclusive. We said yes, and then we moved on from there. And his basically from the beginning was, you're the one I want to marry. You're the one that I want to be with. And it took me a little bit, and I said, I'm really afraid of getting married again because I really am afraid. And he said, listen, if you don't ever want to get married, that's fine. Again, I'll be there with you, but I want to be with you. I don't want there to be anybody else. And I said, okay. Again, calm, no pressure. So We got married in 2015, in July 2015. We've been married now for 3 years. We have a 2-year-old son, and we are expecting our second child, who's a girl, in October, so we're really excited about that. And I tear up even just like to tell that part of the story, because had I stayed with my ex-husband, I would still be living this life that I was not fully living. I used to have a place I would go to cry. It was my crying place. I live in Long Island. There's water by me. There was a dock I would go to, and I would go there and cry for hours sometimes. I would see that my ex-husband was home, and I would go to cry. That would have been my life. That's the way that life would have kept going. And the way things were going, it just would have gotten worse and worse in that relationship. And I just was becoming a completely different person. I had been drinking more. I had been just out more. I wasn't myself, and I was losing who I was. And there were points when I lost my temper with my ex, and it was because I just wasn't being listened to. I wasn't being heard. And I was kind of like when you back an animal up into a corner, and it was just like I didn't know how to protect myself. That's not how relationships should be. And I'm so lucky and honored that I get to now live this life with my husband, whom I chose and whom I was searching for. I was looking for him the whole time, and we both say like it's amazing the experiences we had before each other, because they all got us ready to be to where we are now. And once you make that decision to change and you start really working on you and becoming a whole person, that's going to help you attract the right person. Before that, I was broken. I didn't know really who I was. And that's one of the things that I really want to focus on, especially tonight. So that was my story. That was a little bit more details about like the fun part of the story of the rediscovering myself. And that really kind of goes in perfectly into what we're going to be talking about today. So for tonight, I wanted to talk about, so again, last night we talked about how did I get here? And if you've ever listened to Talking Heads, I love that band, by the way. I listened to it today with my son and yesterday because this was in my head because we're talking about how did I get here yesterday. How Did I Get Here? It's Once in a Lifetime is the name of the song. Really great song. Listen to it. I don't think you'll be unhappy that you did. But that question of how did I get here and looking at that and analyzing that. So if you missed that yesterday, please definitely watch that from yesterday. And then creating your support team. So tonight, the next step, so step number 3, is going to be reconnecting to you. One of the things that I notice a lot, and this is for myself, it's for other clients that I have, is that people that have been in these toxic relationships have completely lost who they are. They don't know who they are anymore. They don't know who they are alone. They don't know who they are without this drama and toxic relationships in their life. In fact, we get so focused on worrying about the other person. Are they going to get upset with me? Are they angry today? How should I handle this situation? And we start just like being in this weird place where we're constantly on the defense. Like, okay, what's going to happen? Or, maybe if I say this differently or I act differently, and we really start losing who we are. So reconnecting with yourself is one of the major things that you need to work on. So anyone who's coming out of these unhealthy relationships, reconnecting with yourself. And one of the things that is really important in that, and that I see as a theme with everyone, again, myself included, is self-esteem. Self-esteem seems to be low. And I know for me, I had thought that I had pretty high self-esteem. I thought that I was like, oh, I'm a pretty confident, independent woman. I, make good money. I have a great job and whatever. But I obviously was not that great with my self-esteem because I kept allowing these unhealthy relationships to overcome my life. That was just how I lived. So the self-esteem, I'm going to read to you what the Google definition is. I went on Google to find the actual Google definition. So it says, self-esteem, you feel good about yourself and see yourself as deserving the respect of others. When you have low self-esteem, you put little value on your opinions and ideas. You might constantly worry that you aren't good enough. So high self-esteem versus low self-esteem. And if you agree with that or understand where that's coming from, give me a thumbs up or let me know what you think about that, because self-esteem, again, seems to be across the board one of the biggest issues. And I always want to make sure that people don't confuse high self-esteem with being conceited. That's one of those things, people get confused with those two all the time. Being conceited means that you think you're better than everybody else. When you have high self-esteem, you don't need to be. You want to be better than yourself. You want to keep working on you and focusing on yourself and being the best version of you. Someone who is conceited will more often have low self-esteem. Because if you're going out of your way to try to make other people feel bad, that actually, if you're like suppressing other people and going out of your way to make them feel bad, that's because your self-esteem isn't very good. And so, again, what I see a lot of times, and I hate to say ladies, so I'm going to call us out on this, we tend to not be as good with saying kind of not so nice remarks about other ladies, making rude comments or saying things like that. That is actually a sign that there's low self-esteem. So when you're comparing yourself to somebody else, that is a pretty good sign that you have low self-esteem. And one of the things you really need to work on in your whole program of rediscovery is increasing your self-esteem. So one of the things that I recommend is to start looking at ways to improve it. So what are some things you can do? Well, if you're focusing on yourself and focusing on your own growth, your self-esteem is going to increase. There's some prompts that you can use daily to kind of help build you up a little bit. And again, I would write these down now, or if you watch this later, you can write these down later. But some of the prompts are finishing these sentences. I feel good about. My friends would tell you I have a great what? My favorite place is I'm loved by. People say I am good at. I've been told I have pretty. I consider myself good at. What I enjoy most is. The person I admire the most is. I have a natural talent for. Goals for my future are. I know I will reach my goals because I am. People compliment me about. I've been successful at. And now, the question about being successful at, I know some people, when you are feeling very negative and your self-esteem is low, you kind of question, like, I'm not good at anything. I'm horrible at relationships. I'm not good at anything. Well, you've been successful at things in your life to get to where you are now. You wouldn't have gotten, I'm 40 years old. There was a lot of mistakes I made along the way, but I went to school and I got good grades and I got a great job. And if you really have to go and dig deep, and you're saying, I'm in such a low place, I can't think of anything good that I've done. All right, well, were you a good bike rider when you were a kid? Did you, and it's kind of funny because we say to ourselves, like, why even bother fixing this now? Why bother? This is just the way it is. My life is always going to be this bad. I'm too old. Ugh, those are words that I always can't stand. I'm too old. Well, you're not dead, so you're not too old. So just keep that in mind. But think about, I have a 2-year-old. Think about the amount of tries that it took for most children to learn how to be potty trained. How about most kids to learn how to walk? Did they do it right the first time? Did you ride your bike well the first time? Probably not. You had to get up and try over and over and over again until you got it right. And as a little kid, we just kind of knew that we had to keep trying until we got it. But for some reason, for a lot of us, we got older and that fear holds us back. The judgment holds us back. The shame, the guilt, all of those feelings hold us back. I'm not good enough. Well, we've all made mistakes in life, every single one of us. We just can't live there. So working on ways to improve your self-esteem is actually really important. And of course, self-affirmations. There is a lot of really great apps that you can download onto your phone. I know I have an iPhone. I know that there's a few on that I can download from my iPhone, so I'm sure other phones have it as well. But daily affirmations, positive things that before you even get out of bed, you get into the habit of saying to yourself before you do anything, I am good enough, I am smart enough, I am capable, I am strong, I am independent, I am, grateful. Whatever the few positive phrases are that are positive and helpful to get you motivated, I find that doing those before I get out of bed helps my day go more smoothly. And if you're not sure what kind of positive affirmations to use, then definitely download one of those apps and they'll give you choices of things. So you don't even have to think about it on your own if that makes it a little bit uncomfortable or you're not sure where to start from. All right, so self-esteem. Work on self-esteem as part of rediscovering yourself. The next part of it, because this is a few parts here, is to work on your self-care. Self-care. This is a big one. Ladies, again, especially if you're parents, you're concerned all the time about taking care of everybody else. If you've ever been on an airplane, you sat down and the stewardess stood up and they gave every single person the same exact spiel. In case of turbulence, if we lose cabin pressure, there's going to be these masks that come down. Please place securely the mask on your face first before you secure it on another person. That is the best way to remember self-care. If you are going around helping everybody else and putting yourself last all of the time, you are not going to be the best version of you. And what is self-care? Doing things that you enjoy, going to the gym, eating healthy, drinking enough water, yoga, meditation, doing things that you enjoy regularly on a daily basis. It could be part of it, could be your morning affirmations. It could be at night taking a nice bubble bath or a nice shower. Little things every day, because those little things, it's kind of like blowing off the steam. You know, when you don't blow off the steam, and you're like, let's say you're pressure cooking and you know, before you open up the top, you've got to blow some of the steam out before you take it off, or else what happens? The top blows off. Well, if you're slowly letting off the steam, you don't get quite as overwhelmed. Doing the little things every day will help you when the bigger things come up. But that doesn't mean don't do bigger things. So there might be maybe once a week you do something a little bit more special, a little bit more for yourself. But you need to have things that you do completely for you. So self-care, definitely part of the self-esteem. And really when I give this part of it, they're all intertwined. Self-care is going to help with your self-esteem. The self-esteem is going to help with your self-care. And it's going to help with the third part of rediscovering yourself, which is following your passions. So like I explained before, part of my figuring myself out was to go on this like passion quest, was to go and do the things that made me happy and to follow those things. Well, again, a lot of the times we don't know who we are. You know, when I started therapy after I got a divorce, and I remember saying to my therapist, I just want to be back to that person who had excitement for life and saw possibilities in things, because I was in such a dark place. I didn't see those things anymore. And I think for a long time I thought, well, when you're older, you know, people don't have that kind of possibilities. That's like more of a childish thing. And I thought, you know what? I don't care. I want to go back to finding joy. I want to go back to finding passions and following the things that made my heart happy and made me feel good. So the passion quest is a really, really integral part of this whole process. Super, super important. And what I recommend, I'm going to give you a little bit of information on the passion quest and what you can do, is take about a week and write down for that week what you do. I went to work. I met up with a friend for lunch. I went to the gym. I ate healthy. Whatever. Just write down the things that you do and rate it 1 through 10. 10 being the highest, 1 being the worst. And I want you to, every single day for that entire week, really look at your feelings about the experiences that you had. Because one of the things, that I've noticed for me, and again for my clients, is that we kind of just go through it. We don't like it, we're not comfortable, but we do it anyway. And the idea is to fill your life with more things that make you happy, that bring you joy. So after that week, you've rated all the things that you've done. And the idea is after that week to start trying to follow more of the things that you enjoy. Maybe it's you want to join a meetup. I am always a big proponent of joining meetup groups. Those meetup groups all over the country I'm sure there are some things like that in other countries. I'm not aware of which ones are there, but I know in the States we have meetups where you go and you meet up with local people, so you don't have to be with anyone. You can just be by yourself. You don't have to worry about looking for other friends to go with, and just do things that sound interesting to you. Maybe you want to learn about Reiki healing. Maybe you want to learn about spirituality. Maybe you want to learn how to knit or draw or learn Zumba or acrobatics or whatever it is. There are groups out there that you can join with other people that will have the same interests as you do. And if you don't like it, the worst that happens is you don't go back again. But the idea is to really, really start following your passions, rediscovering who you are. And of course, you want to keep living that way. So once you start living in that kind of realm of really following the happiness, you will not be attracted to things that bring you down. And that's why this part is so important in the process. Because one of the things that I've noticed now that I've made kind of my life into that passion quest is now when I feel my energy being brought down, I call them the life suckers, the people that just you feel drained after you're done hanging out with them. I don't have time for that. I don't have time for the drama. I don't have time for any of those things. So really looking at things, people, and things that you do that increase your energy, increase your frequency, and make you feel better will actually help you to attract better people as well, because you will just automatically not be attracted to people that bring down your energy. So rediscovering yourself, that was number 3. And actually one of the things I wanted to share with you, I had right before I went on yesterday, I had a client say to me, and this kind of goes along to what we're talking about here with self-esteem and rediscovery and all that kind of stuff. She said, "Today in the last hour, I have secured a different job and re-enrolled for fall school semester. I told him about you and my development so far about overcommitting and unhealthy ties. Everything went so well. I'm more hopeful to the future, and now I can stop drinking at 12. Winky face. I'm busy again. Thank you so much. You rock." So this was someone, one of my groups actually, who was really noticing some major differences, and she sends me little messages sometimes to let me know how things are going for her. And so I'm so proud of her. And so these little kind of tweaks can really start changing your life. So it's important to start implementing them now. The last one that I want to talk about today, is I want to talk to you about number 4, which is recognize and overcome limiting beliefs. This is the BS. This is the belief systems. These are the things that keep you trapped. And I kind of shared this a little bit before, and I shared this yesterday. My belief system growing up as someone who went to church every Sunday, and my parents staying together, even though they were not always the happiest with each other, and there's a lot of fighting and arguing. But one of the limiting beliefs that I had is that once you get married, you stay married. And I didn't realize that did not mean when there was abuse. If there is abuse, you should not stay married. If someone is cursing at you, you should get away from that relationship. If there is physical violence, you need to get away from that relationship. Don't stay, because it's only going to get worse. So what are other limiting beliefs people might have, those subconscious beliefs? And again, you don't realize you're even thinking of it, but they're just there right under the surface. So some of the other ones might be, I'm always going to be poor. I'm never going to have any money. I'm not smart enough. I'm not capable of being able to live on my own. I need to depend on a man. I'm a female, and females are expected to do X, Y, Z. I don't have a college education, and I'm too old to start now. The age thing again. The list of limiting beliefs and the belief systems that really affect us can be pretty long. So I would recommend for that part, definitely journaling and really digging deep to say, hey, what are some of the things that are keeping me stuck? And with that, you might want to also look at with my clients, I talk about them as incompletes. What are things that are still hanging over your head that you have never had closure for? What are some of the things that you need to deal with? So the limiting beliefs, and then looking at how to have those incompletes completed, because the reality is that the more mess we have, the more stuff we have going on, the less room we have to invite in. So we want to start clearing those things out. Clear out the limiting beliefs, clear out those negative thoughts that are in our head that are keeping us. And that, they were things that we learned from our parents. They were things that we learned as children growing up from maybe friends at school or watching movies, or, relationships are hard. Well, why do we think that? It's because of experiences that we've had before. Is it music that we've listened to? Is it family members that we've seen? Is it friends that we've seen? Why do we have these types of limiting beliefs? Because they are keeping us trapped. So start looking at those, and you can really dig deep and get to the root of what those limiting beliefs are, and then you can move on how to move forward from that. And so that's basically it. I talked about getting closure. It doesn't really go in the limiting beliefs, but I want to just a little bit longer talk about getting closure. It's really important for you to forgive yourself and forgive the people who have wronged you. And this is not for anybody else other than yourself. You can talk about how you had awful experiences as a child, or how these people treated you badly, and you can stay stuck on that. And a lot of people that I see that talk about unhealthy relationships, they focus a lot on why the other person behaved the way they did. And not that that's not important to be able to wrap your head around and everything else, but the priority is you. And if you look at everything as a lesson, your upbringing, the friends that you've had, the experiences that you've had, if everything is a lesson, it kind of makes things a little bit easier. So you could look at all of the lessons that you've had in your life and start to learn from them, so that you, A, don't do those things over again, B, make changes, or 3, maybe appreciate some of them. But looking at those experiences instead of victim mode, you're more in warrior or powerful mode if you're looking at them as lessons. What can I learn? What can I get out of it? And it'll start to really shift your mindset. So keep that in the back of your mind when you're looking at, getting closure and the shame and the guilt and the fear and all of those things that come with it. Because people that are successful, they have that fear. They've had that guilt. They've had all those different feelings, and they push through it. They push through it anyway. And they look at the lessons, and they look at the experience that it gave them. One of the things that I did when I was on my passion quest was I was always really afraid of heights. And so I decided to jump out of an airplane, which is a little bit crazy. But I decided to jump out of an airplane. And I actually liked it so much that I did it 3 times. And what I came to the conclusion is here I was, this fearful thing that I had always been so afraid of was the opposite. It was actually really, really fun. Really, really fun. I would do it again. But I'm pregnant right now, so I will not do it right now. But it was really, really fun. So what were other things in my life that I was keeping myself from experiencing because I was afraid, because I was fearful? When in reality, they were actually really good things. So pushing through that fear, feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And still to this day, I follow the passion quest and I follow the pushing through the fear. When things are uncomfortable, I know that means there's growth. And if it's been a while since I've been uncomfortable doing something, I push myself to do it. Because that's the way that I know I will change. That's the way that I know that I will grow. And that's the opportunity that you have, that you've been given to make those changes. If you've said to yourself, you know what? I'm just not that important. This is just the life that I'm going to have. I need to remind you that you have the power to make these changes. You do not have to stay trapped here. You do not have to stay stuck, feeling alone. Life is passing you by as you sit on the couch wondering what's going on. Is this the life that I was meant for? For those of you who have children, You look at your children and you say, do I want this life for my children? You owe it to them and you owe it to yourself to start creating your best life, because this is your opportunity. You don't need to feel alone. You don't need to feel like there's nothing out there for you, because there is. Every single one of us is here for a purpose. And you finding yours will actually help everybody else. It'll help your family. It'll help yourself. It'll help the bigger picture of the bigger world. I wanted to share one last thing, and if there's any questions, please make sure that you ask these questions now, because we're getting close to the end. One of the things that I had from a client, they actually sent me, this is another really nice testimonial from one of my clients, and if I can find it. No. Oh, here we go. It was right there and I missed it. This is what one of my clients said to me after working with me. Before working with Stephanie, I was stuck, struggling to let go of things, struggling to move forward, overwhelmed with things I had to do to make the necessary changes to make me happier. Stephanie helped me with activities that made me think through the areas I wanted to make changes in detail, what steps to take, ways to prioritize, and eliminate things that were holding me back, my incompletes, to get to where I want to be. Now I have made great steps forward, or great steps towards these changes, and see that I can get there. I have less weighing me down and a path forward. Stephanie continues to help me by keeping things in the front of my mind and reminding me to reevaluate priorities when needed. I feel like I have gotten more accomplished since working with Stephanie than I have in the past 10 years. So there we go, right from one of my clients. The reality is that you can't do it alone. If you were able to, you would have done it by yourself, and you don't have to stay stuck here. We feel like we're trapped, we feel like we're alone, we feel like life is passing us by, but you don't have to stay there. So please tune in tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to have step 5 and 6. If there are any questions, please make sure that you ask them. I don't see any questions right now. So if you're watching this as a recorded version, then please feel free to write your questions in the comments, and I will make sure that I get back to every single person. Lindsay, you said thank you for doing these videos. You're welcome. I am so happy to be able to do these videos and that I'm on the other side, because realistically my goal is to get people here. I would like everyone to be here, because we really would have the world being a better place if people were happier, if they felt good in themselves, if they felt like they were being well supported and they were living their best lives. So that is my dream for all of you, is to be able to experience that as well. So if there are no questions, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. And again, if there's any questions while you're watching the recorded version of this, please just leave them in the comments and I will make sure to get back to you as soon as possible. So thank you again, and I will see you tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.